In tonight's news edition, His Majesty meets representatives of the investment sector and stresses its important role in supporting the economy and achieving comprehensive development. The Houthis accept a 5-day humanitarian ceasefire proposed by Saudi Arabia, despite bombings by the Saudi-led coalition on former Yemeni President Saleh's residence in Sana'a. And a super typhoon roars over northeastern Philippines, prompting evacuations and warnings of flooding and landslides. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. His Majesty the King stressed the important role of the investment sector in supporting the national economy and achieving comprehensive development that would improve citizens' standards of living and address the problems of poverty and unemployment. During a meeting with representatives of the investment sector at Al Husseiniya Palace, the King emphasized the need to capitalize on Jordan's security and stability and enhance the kingdom's position in the region and the world. His Majesty also called for providing the necessary support to this vital sector and remove obstacles to pave the way for implementing projects across the kingdom and creating job opportunities for Jordanians. A number of investors presented legislative and investment proposals to enable this sector to expand investments in all governorates across the kingdom. Airport International Group CEO Kild Binger said the meeting with His Majesty focused on challenges facing investors, including the air transport field. He said that despite the challenges, the Queen Alia International Airport made major accomplishments.
Well, I think we have done a lot already. The decision of building this new airport that was made back in 2005 was a fantastic decision, and it works very, very well for the country. Now we are voted the best airport in the Middle East. Who would have thought that just a few years ago? So along from that perspective, we are having a fantastic asset out there, and what we want to do is to use it more, have more people traveling through it.
His Majesty the King discussed with visiting U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack means of forging closer ties between Jordan and the United States in the agricultural field. During a meeting at Al Husseiniya Palace that tackled ways of boosting and developing bilateral relations, the King stressed the importance of exchanging expertise between the two countries for mutual benefit. His Majesty voiced his appreciation for the U.S.'s assistance to Jordan, which contributed to implementing development plans and programs. The King also thanked the U.S. government for the new wheat grant to Jordan, amounting to 100,000 tons. Vilsack stressed the United States' keenness to boost relations with Jordan in various fields, mainly agriculture, and praised His Majesty's reform policies, which contribute to the kingdom's progress and prosperity. Meanwhile, Jordan and the U.S. signed an agreement to promote agricultural development and trade in Jordan. Through the Food for Progress program, the USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service will provide Jordan with 100,000 metric tons of U.S. wheat, valued at approximately $25 million. Minister of Planning and International Cooperation Imad Fakhoury and U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack signed the agreement. Proceeds from the sale of the commodities will be used to implement projects aimed at improving agricultural productivity and stimulating economic growth. Vilsack said the USDA's food assistance will be used to relieve some of the economic burden that Jordan is facing as a result of hundreds of thousands of Syrians who have been displaced because of the Syrian civil war. For his part, Fakhoury noted that revenues of selling the wheat grant will be included in the budget law to fund a development project in agriculture and irrigation that will be agreed upon. Saudi-led coalition airplanes bombed former Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh's residence in southern Sana'a. The coalition launched an airstrike targeting Saleh's residence early in the morning, killing 3 guards and destroying 3 buildings. Saleh, who was not at home at the time of the strike, said in a television interview that the attack targeting him was groundless and unjustified. Journalists filming the aftermath of the strike were caught up in a secondary wave of bombings at the same location, with cameramen fleeing for cover. 3 loud explosions were heard and plumes of smoke were seen rising from the area where Saleh's residence is located in the capital. Meanwhile, the Houthis accepted today a 5-day humanitarian ceasefire proposed by Saudi Arabia, but said it would respond to any violation of the pause. Saudi Arabia on Friday said that a ceasefire could begin on Tuesday if the Houthis agree to the pause, which would let in badly needed food and medical supplies. International concern about the humanitarian situation has grown as the strikes have killed more than 1,300 people, sent locals fleeing from their homes, and destroyed infrastructure, leading to shortage of food, medicine, and fuel. Over to Syria, where Al-Qaeda-linked al-Nusra Front targeted the National Hospital of Jisr al-Shughur, the last remaining Syrian army foothold in Idlib province. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said insurgents got into one of the hospital buildings today after a suicide bomber from Nusra Front blew himself up at dawn. There were reports of fierce clashes inside the hospital. Meanwhile, Turkish Prime Minister Ahmed Davutoglu crossed briefly into Syria to visit the tomb of a reverted Ottoman figure situated a few hundred meters from the border, in a move likely to anger the authorities in Damascus. The tomb of Suleiman Shah, grandfather of the founder of the Ottoman Empire, had originally been sited further inside Syria, but was relocated closer to the border in February in a Turkish military operation, described by the Syrian government as an act of flagrant aggression. Libyan border security officials detained 163 illegal Egyptian migrants that were smuggled in the back of a truck across the border town of Al-Jafra. The arrests were the latest in a series of mass detentions of illegal immigrants from Africa and war-torn nations that are using Libya's shores as a launching pad for their journey to Europe. Meanwhile, European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini said she has not given up hope of winning backing from the UN Security Council for international intervention in Libya to help stop the flow of migrant boats. Mogherini proposed sending European military teams to help stabilize Libya if a ceasefire agreement can be agreed between the two rival governments fighting for power. Pressure for action on the migrant crisis intensified last month after some 800 people drowned when their boat capsized and sank off the coast of Libya. Super Typhoon Newell roared over the northeastern Philippines, prompting evacuations and warnings of flooding and landslides in the mountainous regions. The Category 5 storm packed maximum sustained winds of about 260 kilometers per hour and gusts as strong as 315. Authorities said they relocated more than 1,200 residents ahead of the typhoon's arrival. Thousands of passengers were stranded in seaports, and flights and sea crossings were cancelled. The Philippines National Civil Defense said they were taking no chances given the possibility of storm surges of up to 2 meters. The typhoon is expected to move northwest and head towards southern Japan on Tuesday. A replica of the old Summer Palace, one of China's most historically significant sites, officially opened its doors to the public in Zhejiang province. The sprawling $6.4 billion site is set to cover 413 hectares when it is completed, with 95% of the original old Summer Palace architecture reproduced. The entire project is scheduled for completion next year. There are reports that the management of the original Summer Palace has threatened to sue the developers of the replica for infringement of intellectual property. The original old Summer Palace in Beijing is of particular significance as it was overrun in 1860 by British and French troops who burnt and looted hundreds of the traditional Chinese and Western-inspired pavilions, fountains, and gardens. And finally, fair and partly cloudy tonight in most regions, with northwesterly light to moderate winds. Tomorrow, a slight rise in temperatures expected, creating moderate but dusty conditions. Light rain is expected in the evening, while winds will be southwesterly moderate to brisk, blowing dust in the desert areas. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect hot and dusty conditions, with southerly moderate to brisk winds and slightly choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. His Majesty meets representatives of the investment sector and stresses its important role in supporting the economy and achieving comprehensive development. The Houthis accept a 5-day humanitarian ceasefire proposed by Saudi Arabia, despite bombings by the Saudi-led coalition on former Yemeni President Saleh's residence in Sana'a. And a super typhoon roars over the northeastern Philippines, prompting evacuations and warnings of flooding and landslides. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.